My son put papers in front of me. Sign over the house, or I'll send you to a nursing home. My hands were shaking, but I signed. But he didn't know that the house was actually, I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had spent 43 years in that house. 43 years of memories soaked into every floorboard, every crack in the kitchen tile, every tree in the backyard that my late husband George and I had planted together. The mortgage had been paid off for 15 years. It was mine, completely mine, or so I thought. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning in March. Brad, my only son, showed up unannounced with his wife Jennifer. They never visited without calling first. Jennifer's smile seemed too wide, too practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in the car mirror before walking up my driveway. "Mom, we need to talk about your future," Brad said, settling onto my couch without being asked. His tone had that patronizing edge I'd started noticing more frequently over the past year. When had my boy become this stranger? They talked about my age, my declining health. I'd had one dizzy spell at the grocery store, nothing more, and how worried they were. Jennifer kept touching Brad's arm, a subtle gesture of unity that made my stomach turn. They suggested I might be more comfortable in an assisted living facility. They had brochures, color-printed, expensive-looking brochures. "I'm perfectly fine here," I told them firmly. "This is my home." The look they exchanged spoke volumes. It was the look of people who'd already made a decision and were merely going through the motions of pretending I had a say. Over the following weeks, the visits became more frequent. Always the same theme: my supposed inability to care for myself. They pointed out the garden I'd let grow wild, George's garden, which I couldn't bear to touch. They mentioned the time I forgot to return their call for 2 days. I'd been at my book club and then volunteering at the library, but they made it sound like I'd wandered off confused. Then came the doctor's appointments Brad insisted on scheduling. Dr. Morrison, my physician of 20 years, found nothing wrong except the usual aches and pains of being 72. But Brad requested a copy of all my medical records. "For family files," he said. I started noticing other things. Mail that went missing. Important documents I'd kept in my study, deeds, insurance papers, seemed shuffled through, though Brad and Jennifer denied touching anything when they stopped by to check on me. They'd somehow gotten a key. I never gave them a key. The final blow came on a Thursday evening in late April. Brad arrived alone this time, which should have been my first warning. He had a manila folder and an expression I'd never seen on his face before: cold, determined, almost hostile. "Mom, we need to resolve the situation," he said, not even waiting for me to offer him coffee. "Jennifer and I have consulted with an elder care attorney. Given your age and recent health concerns, we believe it's in your best interest to sign over the house to me now for safeguarding. This way, you'll avoid any probate issues later, and we can ensure you're properly cared for." My mouth went dry. "Brad, I'm not dying. I'm healthy. This house is mine." He slid papers across my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd celebrated his birthdays, where George and I had shared thousands of meals. "If you don't sign willingly, Mom, I'm prepared to pursue other legal options. I've documented your declining cognitive function, Dr. Morrison's notes about your dizzy spell, your neglect of the property, your social isolation." Social isolation? I volunteer 4 times a week. "That's not what our documentation shows." His voice was flat, rehearsed. "Sign the papers, Mom." or I'll have no choice but to petition the court for guardianship and place you in a managed care facility. The house will be sold to cover costs. Either way, you can't stay here alone anymore." My hands trembled as I stared at the documents. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, was threatening me, blackmailing me. How had it come to this? "Sign, Mom. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." What choice did I have? If he pursued guardianship, I'd lose everything anyway and end up warehoused in some facility, drugged and forgotten. At least this way, I'd still have some dignity, or so I tried to tell myself. My hands shook violently as I picked up the pen. Tears blurred my vision as I signed my name on the designated lines, each signature feeling like a betrayal of everything George and I had built. Brad gathered the papers quickly, efficiently, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You're doing the right thing, Mom," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. After he left, I sat at that table for hours, staring at nothing. But Brad didn't know something crucial, something that would change everything. The house wasn't actually in my name anymore. The night after signing those papers, I didn't sleep. I sat in George's old armchair, the one I'd kept exactly as he'd left it, and took inventory of what I'd just lost. Or rather, what Brad thought I'd lost. My son had just stolen my home. No, worse. He'd convinced me to hand it over under duress. The legal term, I'd later learn, was coercion. But in that moment, all I knew was the sick feeling in my stomach and the rage building behind my breastbone like a caged animal. How much had I lost? 43 years of memories, certainly. The equity George and I had built. The house was worth at least $450,000 now, maybe more, given the neighborhood's recent development. My security, my independence, my dignity. But most painful was the loss I couldn't quantify. My son. The boy who'd cried in my arms after skinning his knee. The teenager I'd defended when he made mistakes. The man I'd helped financially when his business struggled 10 years ago. $35,000 I'd never asked to be repaid. When had he turned into this? I thought about Jennifer, her calculated smile, her designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly expenses. Brad had changed after marrying her 5 years ago. Slowly, subtly, but unmistakably. She came from money, old money, and seemed perpetually disappointed that Brad hadn't provided the lifestyle she felt entitled to. I'd overheard her once at a family gathering, complaining to her sister about being stuck waiting for inheritance while her friends bought summer homes. The pieces fell into place like shards of broken glass, each one cutting. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about money. My money. George's and my life's work, converted into equity they wanted to access now, not later. Fear crept in as dawn broke. What could I do? I was a 72-year-old widow. Brad was a successful real estate attorney. He knew every legal loophole, every manipulation tactic. I'd already signed the papers. Was it too late? But then something else rose up in me. Something I hadn't felt in years. George used to call it my steel spine. The stubborn determination that had gotten me through raising a child alone after he died, through career challenges, through every hardship life had thrown at me. I made coffee and forced myself to think clearly. What did Brad not know? 3 years ago, after George passed, I'd become terrifyingly aware of my own mortality. I'd read articles about elder abuse, about family members manipulating aging parents. I'd watched it happen to my friend Dorothy, whose daughter had drained her savings account. I'd promised myself I'd be smarter. So I'd consulted with Eleanor Westbrook, an estate attorney I'd met through the library's donor circle. Eleanor was sharp, thorough, and had no connection to Brad's legal network. Together, we'd restructured everything. The house hadn't been in my name for 2 years. I'd transferred it into an irrevocable living trust, with myself as the sole beneficiary during my lifetime, but managed by Eleanor as trustee. Upon my death, it would go to charity, the Children's Literacy Foundation George and I had always supported. Brad would receive a small monetary bequest, but not the house. Never the house, not after the way he'd started treating me. The papers Brad made me sign yesterday? Worthless. You can't sign away something you don't legally own. He'd have discovered this eventually when he tried to record the deed transfer, but that would take weeks. The county recorder's office was notoriously slow. A plan began forming in my mind, delicate and dangerous. I couldn't just tell Brad the truth. He'd find some way to manipulate the situation, maybe even sue Eleanor or challenge the trust. No, I needed to let him think he'd won, at least temporarily. Let him show his true colors completely, gather evidence of his real intentions, and then reveal the truth in a way that left no room for his manipulation. But I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I picked up my phone and called Eleanor's office, leaving a message for her to call me urgently. Then I called my friend Patricia, who'd been a paralegal for 30 years before retiring. Finally, I called Father Michael at St. Augustine's, not for spiritual counsel, though I needed that too, but because he'd witnessed countless family conflicts and had a moral clarity I trusted. I'd spent my whole life being nice, being accommodating, putting others first. Look where that had gotten me. My own son thought he could threaten and rob me. No more. If Brad wanted a fight, I'd give him one. But it would be on my terms, fought with weapons he didn't know I possessed. Truth, documentation, and the law he thought he'd mastered. I showered, dressed carefully, and made a list. This was war, and I intended to win. Eleanor called me back within 2 hours. "Margaret, I got your message. What's happened?" Sitting in her office that afternoon, surrounded by law books and the faint smell of vanilla, she always kept a candle burning. I recounted everything. The manipulation, the threats, the signed papers. My voice cracked only once when I described the look in Brad's eyes. Eleanor listened without interrupting, making precise notes in her neat handwriting. "The papers he had you sign are meaningless," she confirmed. "You don't own the house, the trust does. But Margaret, this is serious. What he did constitutes elder abuse, possibly fraud. We need to document everything carefully. That's why I'm here. I need to know my options, and I need to do this right." Eleanor outlined the strategy. First, we'd file a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services, documenting Brad's coercive behavior. Second, we'd prepare a cease and desist letter regarding his harassment and threats. Third, and this was crucial, we'd gather concrete evidence of his true intentions before revealing that the house transfer was invalid. "We need him to incriminate himself further," Eleanor explained. "Right now, he could claim he was genuinely concerned about your welfare. But if we can show a pattern of financial manipulation, threats, and calculated exploitation, we build an irrefutable case." Patricia met me for coffee the next morning at the diner we'd frequented for 15 years. She was blunt, as always. "You need to record everything, Margaret. Every conversation, every visit. New York is a one-party consent state. You can legally record conversations you're part of. Buy a small digital recorder. Keep it in your pocket." "Won't that seem paranoid?" "Paranoid is letting your son steal your home. Smart is protecting yourself." She squeezed my hand. "I've seen too many cases where the victim had no proof, just their word against a younger, more credible family member. Don't let that be you. That afternoon, I purchased a small recording device at an electronics store. The young clerk showed me how to use it, probably wondering why a woman my age needed such a gadget. If only he knew. Brad and Jennifer showed up 3 days later, unannounced again. They'd gotten too comfortable with their key. I hadn't changed the locks yet, on Eleanor's advice. Let them think they still have access and control, she'd said. I pressed the record button in my cardigan pocket as they settled into my living room. Mom, we need to discuss next steps, Brad began. He had a new folder, more papers, I assumed. Now that the house transfer is complete, Jennifer and I have been looking at facilities. There's an excellent place in Westchester. Westchester? That's an hour away. Jennifer's voice was honey-sweet, poisonous. It's highly rated, Margaret. And frankly, with the equity from this house, you can afford the best care. We're already in touch with a realtor. The market is strong right now. We could list it within the month. My blood turned to ice, but I kept my expression neutral. You're selling the house? Already? It's the smart financial move, Brad said. And there it was. No pretense of concern for me, just cold calculation. The proceeds will go into a managed account. You'll be taken care of, Mom. And the rest of the money? Jennifer's mask slipped, just for a second. Well, there will be estate considerations, of course, capital gains strategies. Brad and I have financial obligations, too. We're not discussing this now. Brad cut her off sharply, shooting his wife a warning look. Mom, the point is, you need to start packing your personal items. The realtor wants to stage the house and I haven't agreed to move anywhere. Brad's jaw tightened. Mom? We've been through this. You signed the papers. The house is mine now. Legally, I can make decisions about it. If you refuse to cooperate, I'll have to pursue that guardianship we discussed. Is that what you want? A court determining you're incompetent? There it was, the threat, clear and recorded. I forced tears into my eyes, not difficult, given the betrayal coursing through me. No, please. I need time. This is happening so fast. Jennifer's voice softened into false sympathy. We understand it's an adjustment. But honestly, Margaret, you'll be so much happier not dealing with home maintenance. No more worrying about repairs, yard work, property taxes. When do I have to leave? I whispered. We're thinking end of May, Brad said. That gives you 6 weeks. Very generous, really. After they left, I sat trembling. Not from fear this time, but fury. I'd recorded every word. Brad's admission that he now owned the house, their plan to sell it immediately, their barely concealed anticipation of the proceeds, the guardianship threat. Eleanor had wanted evidence of his true intentions. Well, now we had it. I made copies of the recording that night, storing them in 3 separate locations. Then I called Eleanor and left a message. I have what we need, the first proof. He's planning to sell the house within weeks, but I had another move to make. Something Eleanor didn't know about yet. If Brad wanted to play dirty, I could too. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to Brad's largest client, the Henderson Corporation. I'd met Tom Henderson years ago at a charity event. He valued integrity above all else in his business relationships, but I didn't send it. Not yet. That was ammunition for later. For now, I needed to let Brad believe he was winning. Eleanor filed the Adult Protective Services complaint on a Monday morning. Within days, an investigator named Sarah Chen contacted me, her voice professional but warm. We met at a neutral location, a library branch across town, where I wouldn't risk Brad seeing us. I played her the recording. Watching her expression shift from neutral to concerned to outright alarmed was validating. Someone official finally believed me. Mrs. Patterson, This is clear evidence of financial exploitation and coercion, Sarah said, making notes. The threats regarding guardianship, the rushed timeline, the admission of intent to sell for profit, these establish a pattern. We'll be opening a formal investigation. How long will that take? These cases move slowly, I won't lie to you, but we'll be contacting your son and daughter-in-law for interviews. They'll know something is happening. Good, I said firmly. Let them know. The next step was harder. Eleanor and I drafted the cease and desist letter, formally demanding Brad stop all harassment, return my house key, and cease any attempts to access my property or finances. Eleanor's language was surgical, citing specific laws and making clear that his actions were being documented and investigated. We had it delivered by courier on a Thursday afternoon. I imagined Brad's face when he opened it, the shock transforming to rage. I didn't have to imagine for long. He arrived at my door 3 hours later, face flushed, the letter crumpled in his fist. Jennifer was with him, looking equally furious but more controlled. I'd been expecting this. My phone was recording in my pocket again. "What the hell is this?" Brad shouted, not even waiting for me to fully open the door. "Adult Protective Services? A cease and desist? Have you lost your mind?" "Please lower your voice, Brad. The neighbors—" "I don't give a damn about the neighbors. You think you can accuse me of elder abuse? Me? After everything I've done for you? After I've tried to help you?" Jennifer's hand on his arm was restraining, not comforting. "Brad, calm down. Let's discuss this rationally." She turned to me, her expression calculating. "Margaret, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. We're only trying to look out for your best interests. Quote, by threatening to declare me incompetent? By stealing my house?" "Stealing?" Brad's laugh was harsh. "You signed it over voluntarily. If you're now claiming you didn't understand what you were signing, that's exactly the kind of cognitive decline we've been worried about." "I understood perfectly. I understood I was being coerced and threatened." "That's ridiculous. Mom, I think you need to see a neurologist. These paranoid delusions." "They're not delusions when I have recordings, Brad." The silence that followed was deafening. Brad's face went pale, then flushed again. You recorded me? In your own home? That's completely legal in New York," I said calmly. "One-party consent. Look it up. Oh, wait. You're an attorney. You already know that." Jennifer stepped forward, her voice dropping to something more dangerous than her husband's, shouting, "Margaret, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing. If you pursue this complaint, it becomes public record. The whole town will know our family's business. Your friends at the library, the church community, everyone will know you've accused your own son of trying to harm you. Is that really what you want? That humiliation? Is that a threat?" "It's reality," Jennifer said coolly. "And if you think we'll just accept these baseless accusations, you're mistaken. We'll fight this. We'll subpoena your medical records, interview your friends about your confusion and forgetfulness, document every instance of your declining faculties. By the time we're done, that APS investigation will conclude you're exactly what we've said all along. An elderly woman who needs protection from her own poor judgment." Brad found his voice again, lower now, but seething. "Drop this complaint, Mom. Apologize to APS for wasting their time, and we'll forget this happened. We'll even let you stay in the house a bit longer, give you more time to adjust. But if you don't..." He let the threat hang. "Or what? Or we'll make this very ugly. I know judges, court-appointed guardians, psychiatrists who evaluate competency. You're 72 years old, widowed, living alone. How hard do you think it would be to paint you as mentally unstable? Especially after you've made these wild recorded accusations. My hands wanted to shake, but I willed them still. Get out of my house, now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing. They left, but Jennifer's parting shot was ice cold. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, Margaret. After they were gone, I locked the door and sank onto the couch, heart hammering. I'd stood up to them, hadn't backed down, but Jennifer's threats had teeth. They could make things ugly, very ugly. I called Eleanor immediately. They came. They threatened me. It's escalating. Did you record it? Every word. Good. That's more evidence. Margaret, they're scared now. Scared people make mistakes. Let them. In the meantime, I think you need a few days away from this. Do you have somewhere you can go? Someone who can stay with you? Patricia insisted I come stay with her and her husband for a long weekend. You need distance, sweetie. And honestly, if they show up again while you're gone, that's trespassing we can report. For 3 days, I tried to breathe, tried to rest. But my mind wouldn't stop circling the same fears. What if they were right? What if they could convince a court I was incompetent? I'd heard horror stories of guardianships where the elderly person lost all control. But then I'd remember, the house wasn't mine to lose. They'd taken nothing but worthless paper. The thought made me smile for the first time in days. The email arrived on Tuesday morning, a week after I'd returned from Patricia's. It was from Jennifer, not Brad. Calculated, I was sure. The subject line read, "Can we talk? Please, Margaret. I know things have been tense between us. I'm writing because I care about you and about this family. Brad has been beside himself with worry and hurt. He can't understand why you'd accuse him of such terrible things when all he's ever wanted is to ensure you're safe and cared for. I'm asking you, as another woman, as family, to please meet with me. Just the two of us, without lawyers or formalities. Let's have coffee and talk honestly. I think there's been a terrible miscommunication, and I believe we can fix this before it tears this family apart permanently. Please, for Brad's sake, and for your own peace of mind. With love, Jennifer." I read it 3 times, admiring the craftsmanship, the appeal to female solidarity, the emotional manipulation about family, the suggestion that I was the one tearing things apart. It was masterful. I showed it to Eleanor during our meeting that afternoon. She snorted. Classic manipulation. They're trying a softer approach now that aggression didn't work. What are you going to do? Meet with her, I said. Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. With my recorder running, in a public place. Let's see what she's really after. We met at a cafe downtown 3 days later. Jennifer was already there, dressed in casual elegance, expensive jeans, a cashmere sweater, perfect makeup. She hugged me like we were close, which we'd never been. Margaret, thank you for coming. I've ordered your favorite, Earl Grey, right? She'd done her homework. We settled into a corner booth, and Jennifer's expression became earnest, concerned. I need you to understand something. Brad is devastated. He feels like he's lost his mother. He tried to steal my house and threaten me into a nursing home. That's not how he sees it. Margaret, he genuinely believes you're struggling. The garden you've neglected. I'm not discussing this again, Jennifer. She shifted tactics smoothly. Okay, let's talk about solutions then. What if we could find a compromise? You could stay in the house. We'd drop any talk of assisted living. And in exchange, you'd drop the APS complaint and the cease and desist. We'd all just start over. Wouldn't that be better than this legal battle? And the papers Brad had me sign, the house transfer? Jennifer waved a hand dismissively. We could delay any action on that. Indefinitely, even. You'd stay put. we'd stay out of your business. A fresh start. It was tempting, I'll admit. The thought of ending this conflict, of having peace again, pulled at something deep in my chest. I was so tired of the tension, the fear, the constant vigilance. But then I looked at Jennifer's eyes, calculating even as her mouth smiled, and I remembered something George used to say. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. They'd shown me who they were. This was just another manipulation. No, I said quietly. I don't think so. Jennifer's smile tightened. Margaret, be reasonable. You're 72 years old. Do you really want to spend whatever time you have left fighting with your only child? Fighting legal battles? Wouldn't you rather have peace? Family dinners again? Grandchildren visiting? I don't have grandchildren. Not yet. But Brad and I are trying. Don't you want to be part of that child's life? Or would you rather be the bitter old woman we have to explain to them, the grandmother who accused us of awful things? Ah, there it was. The knife slipped between the ribs. The suggestion that I'd lose not just Brad, but any future family. That I'd die alone and unmourned. My hands stayed steady around my teacup. If you and Brad have children, I hope they're lucky enough never to see you treat them the way you've treated me. And if they do, I hope they have the spine to fight back. Jennifer's mask cracked. You're making a mistake, a serious mistake. We were offering you an out. I don't need an out. I need my son to stop trying to rob me. I left cash for the tea and walked out, Jennifer's fury burning into my back. But I felt stronger than I had in weeks. That evening, Father Michael visited my home. I'd asked him to come, needing someone who understood both faith and human nature. You're doing the right thing, Margaret, he said, after I'd explained everything. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even with family, especially with family. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh, if I should give Brad another chance. He's had chances. He chose threats and manipulation. That was his decision, not yours. Father Michael's expression was gentle but firm. You know what I see when I look at you now? Strength, clarity. You're protecting yourself the way God intended, with wisdom and courage. Patricia organized a small gathering the next evening, just her, Father Michael, Eleanor, and me. Moral Support Committee, she announced. You need to know you're not alone in this. We sat in Patricia's living room, drinking wine and eating cheese, and for the first time in months, I felt held, supported, believed. Eleanor raised her glass. To Margaret, for refusing to be a victim. We clinked glasses and I felt something shift inside me. Not just determination now, but certainty. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. And I wasn't going to surrender. They came on a Sunday morning, which felt deliberately calculated. A day when neighbors were home, when any scene would be witnessed by the whole street. Brad and Jennifer stood on my porch with somber expressions and, surprisingly, a bouquet of flowers. Mom? Brad began, his voice carefully modulated. We'd like to apologize. May we come in? Every instinct screamed danger, but I needed to see this through. I let them in, my phone already recording in my pocket. Brad sat on the couch, Jennifer beside him, both wearing expressions of practiced remorse. The flowers lay on my coffee table between us like a prop in a stage play. Mom, we've done a lot of soul-searching this week, Brad said. Jennifer and I realize we came on too strong. We were worried about you, but we expressed it in all the wrong ways. Jennifer nodded, taking his hand. We love you, Margaret. We want you to know that. Everything we've done has come from a place of concern, but we see now that it felt like something else, something darker. And that was never our intention. Really, I said flatly. Really, Brad insisted. So here's what we propose. Let's start fresh. completely fresh. You drop the APS complaint, which, honestly, Mom, is damaging to all of us, and we'll tear up those transfer papers. We'll forget all of this happened and go back to being a normal family. Just like that? Just like that. Jennifer's smile was warm, welcoming. We'll even help you with the house maintenance you've been struggling with. Brad can handle the repairs. I'll help organize the garden cleanup. We can make this house perfect for you again. They painted such a pretty picture. Reconciliation, family harmony, support without control. For someone who didn't know better, it would have sounded ideal. But I'd seen this tactic before, in books Patricia had recommended about manipulation and abuse. It was called hoovering, sucking the victim back in with promises and apologies before the cycle of abuse continued. What about the APS investigation? I asked. That's not something I can just drop. They're conducting their own inquiry. Brad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You could tell them it was a misunderstanding, that you overreacted due to stress and grief, which is completely understandable given Dad's loss. They'd close the case immediately. And the recordings I have? Destroy them, Jennifer said simply. They're just creating more pain for everyone. Don't you want peace, Margaret? Don't you want your son back? There it was, the emotional hostage-taking. Agree to their terms or lose your family. Never mind that they were the ones who'd betrayed me. I need time to think about this, I said carefully. Brad leaned forward. Mom, we need an answer today. The APS investigator is interviewing our friends and neighbors this week. It's humiliating. People are asking questions, making assumptions. If you're going to call them off, it needs to be now. What's not reasonable is dragging your own son through the mud, Brad snapped, his careful facade cracking. He took a breath, visibly controlling himself. Sorry, This has been hard on me too, Mom. On both of us. Jennifer's been crying herself to sleep worrying about our reputation, about what people must think. Maybe you should have thought about that before you threatened to have me declared incompetent, I said quietly. The temperature in the room dropped. Jennifer's expression went cold, her mask slipping completely. You know what? I'm tired of playing nice, she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. The truth is, Margaret, you're a stubborn, selfish old woman who can't accept that she needs help. This house is too much for you. You're too much for yourself. Brad has been patient, more patient than I would have been. But enough is enough. Jennifer, Brad tried to interrupt, but she was on a roll. No, she needs to hear this. Margaret, you have two choices. One, you do what Brad's asking. You back off, drop these ridiculous accusations, and let us help you transition into appropriate housing. Or two, we make your life a living hell. We contest your competency in court. We tie up your assets in litigation. We make sure every friend you have knows about your paranoid delusions and mental decline. Your precious library volunteer position? We'll make sure they know you're unstable. Your church? Same thing. By the time we're done, no one will believe a word you say. Brad was rubbing his face, but he didn't contradict her. The silence was admission. Are you threatening me? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. We're explaining reality, Jennifer said coldly. You're alone, Margaret. Old, widowed, alone. We have resources, connections, credibility. Who do you think people will believe? A successful attorney and his wife, or an elderly widow making wild accusations? I stood up. Get out of my house. Mom, Brad started, but I cut him off. Get out now before I call the police for trespassing. Jennifer's laugh was cruel. Call them. We'll tell them how confused you've been, how we're concerned about your increasingly erratic behavior. You think that recording in your pocket will help you? We'll get it thrown out on technicalities. Brad knows every judge in this county. They left, but Jennifer turned back at the door, her final words venomous. "You've just chosen the hard way, Margaret. I hope you enjoy it." The door slammed. Through my window, I watched them argue on the sidewalk, Brad gesturing, Jennifer jabbing her finger toward my house. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage, from validation. They'd finally shown their true faces. No more pretense of concern, just naked greed, threats, and malice. And I'd recorded every word. Eleanor convened what she called the final meeting in her office on a Wednesday morning, 2 weeks after Jennifer's mask had slipped. Present were myself, Eleanor Sarah Chen from APS, and, surprisingly, a district attorney's assistant named Marcus Webb. "Mrs. Patterson, we've reviewed all the evidence," Sarah Chen began. "The recordings, the timeline of events, the coercive transfer documents. What your son and daughter-in-law did constitutes clear elder financial exploitation under New York law." Marcus Webb leaned forward. "We're prepared to bring charges, Mrs. Patterson, but we wanted to meet with you first, give you the option of how you'd like to proceed. This could be handled criminally, civilly, or both." I looked at Eleanor, who nodded. "There's something else they need to know," I said. "Something Brad doesn't know yet." I explained about the trust, the house transfer 2 years earlier, the fact that every document Brad had made me sign was legally meaningless. Sarah Chen's expression shifted from sympathy to something closer to grim satisfaction. "So he coerced you into signing over property you don't even own?" Marcus whistled low. "That's attempted fraud on top of everything else." "I want to confront him," I said. "All of it. The recordings, the investigation, the truth about the house. I want him to know what he's done, what he's lost, and that it was all for nothing." Eleanor looked concerned. "Margaret, confronting him directly could be risky. I'm 72 years old, and I've spent 2 months being terrorized by my own son. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes he's failed." They agreed, with conditions. The confrontation would happen in Eleanor's office, with everyone present. Brad and Jennifer would be summoned under the guise of a settlement discussion. They'd walk in expecting to negotiate terms of my surrender. Instead, they'd walk into the truth. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Brad and Jennifer arrived exactly on time. Jennifer in a power suit, Brad carrying a briefcase probably full of legal documents for me to sign. Their confidence shattered the moment they saw who was in the room. "What is this?" Brad demanded, looking from Sarah Chen to Marcus Webb. "Who are these people?" "Sit down, Mr. Patterson," Marcus said calmly. "We have a lot to discuss." They sat. Jennifer's hand found Brad's arm, but it was protective now, not performative. Eleanor took the lead. "Mr. Patterson, Ms. Patterson, you're here because an investigation into elder financial exploitation has been ongoing for several weeks. We've gathered substantial evidence of your attempts to coerce Mrs. Patterson into signing over her home, threats of guardianship proceedings, and harassment." "That's absurd," Brad started, but Eleanor held up a hand. "We have recordings, multiple recordings, of your threats, your admission of intent to sell the property for profit, your blackmail regarding guardianship, and, most recently, your wife's explicit threats of retaliation if Mrs. Patterson didn't comply with your demands." Jennifer had gone pale. Brad's face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. "You can't. Those recordings aren't admissible. One-party consent doesn't—" "New York is a one-party consent state, Mr. Patterson," Marcus interrupted. "As an attorney, you know this. The recordings are entirely legal and entirely damning." I found my voice then, cold and clear. "You want to know what the most pathetic part is, Brad? All of this, the threats, the manipulation, the destruction of our relationship, was for nothing. What are you talking about? The house? The house you tried so hard to steal from me. I don't own it. Silence. Complete, ringing silence. What? Brad's voice was barely a whisper. Eleanor slid documents across the table. Mrs. Patterson transferred the property into an irrevocable living trust 2 years ago. She's the lifetime beneficiary, but the legal owner is the trust. Upon her death, the property goes to charity. The papers you had her sign? They transferred nothing because she had nothing to transfer. You coerced her into signing worthless documents. Jennifer made a strangled sound. Brad was staring at the trust documents like they were written in a foreign language. You did this 2 years ago? After watching what happened to my friend Dorothy, I said. After noticing how you and Jennifer started asking about my finances after your father died. After seeing the way you looked at this house like it was already yours. You set us up, Jennifer hissed. This whole thing was a trap. No, I said firmly. You set yourselves up. I just protected myself. Everything that's happened since is because of your choices, your greed, your willingness to terrorize your own mother for money you were never going to get. Marcus Webb spoke again. Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Patterson, you have 2 options. Option 1, Mrs. Patterson presses full charges. Attempted fraud, elder financial exploitation, coercion. You'll likely face criminal prosecution, potential prison time, and guaranteed disbarment for you, Mr. Patterson. Brad's face had gone from red to gray. Option 2, you sign a comprehensive agreement. You'll return all keys to Mrs. Patterson's property. You'll have no contact with her whatsoever unless she initiates it. You'll submit to a restraining order. You'll cooperate fully with the APS investigation. And you'll make a formal, written apology acknowledging what you've done. And if we do that? Brad's voice was hoarse. Mrs. Patterson won't press criminal charges, Eleanor said. But the investigation remains on record. Any future attempt to contact her, manipulate her, or contest her estate will result in immediate prosecution. I watched my son crumble and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 24 hours, Marcus said. That's how long you have to decide. They left without another word to me. No apology, no plea, just defeated silence. I'd won. Brad and Jennifer signed the agreement on Saturday morning, delivered by courier rather than in person. Their lawyer, not Brad himself, he couldn't face me, included a brief note requesting leniency and understanding during this difficult time. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. The written apology arrived separately, a stilted, legal-sounding document that admitted to errors in judgment and inappropriate pressure, but carefully avoided words like theft or abuse. Eleanor had insisted on specific language, which they'd resisted, but ultimately provided when Marcus Webb reminded them of the alternative. This isn't much of an apology, I said, reading Brad's signature at the bottom. It's an admission of guilt, Eleanor countered. That's what matters legally. The emotional apology, if it ever comes, will have to be on your terms and your timeline. The restraining order was filed that afternoon. Brad was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of my property unless I explicitly invited him. Jennifer, too. Their names were flagged in the county recorder's office. Any attempt to file claims against my property would trigger immediate notification to Eleanor and law enforcement. But the real victory came 2 weeks later. Brad's largest client, the Henderson Corporation, terminated their contract with his firm. I'd never sent that email I'd drafted. I didn't have to. Tom Henderson had heard through the network of small-town gossip about the investigation and had called me directly. Margaret, I heard something disturbing about your son, he'd said. I need to know if it's true. I'd told him everything, the recordings, the coercion, the attempted fraud. Tom had listened in silence, then said quietly, I'm sorry you went through that. and I'm sorry to tell you that I can't do business with someone who'd do that to his own mother. The Henderson account had been 40% of Brad's business. Its loss was catastrophic. Within a month, 2 more clients left. In the legal community, word had spread. Brad Patterson couldn't be trusted. Brad Patterson had tried to defraud his elderly mother. Brad Patterson was under investigation for elder abuse. His reputation, the thing Jennifer had threatened me with, the social capital they'd weaponized against me, was in ruins. Jennifer filed for divorce 3 months later. According to Patricia's sources, she'd remained friendly with Jennifer's sister, who was appalled by the whole situation. Jennifer had realized that Brad was no longer the financially successful attorney she'd married. Without his business, without prospects, he was just a man who'd destroyed his relationship with his mother for nothing. She took the Mercedes, their savings, and moved back to Connecticut with her parents. Brad was left with legal bills, a failing practice, and the house they'd mortgaged to fund their lifestyle, a house now underwater financially. I heard through Father Michael that Brad had tried to reach out to me indirectly, asking if there was any way to make things right. But Eleanor's advice was firm. The restraining order exists for a reason. If he truly wants to apologize, he can do it in writing, through proper channels. Don't let him manipulate his way back into your life. I didn't respond to his overtures. The APS investigation concluded with a formal report documenting the exploitation and adding Brad's name to the state registry of substantiated abuse cases. It would follow him professionally, personally, permanently. Sarah Chen called to deliver the news. I want you to know, Margaret, what you did was brave. Most victims of elder abuse never report it. You not only reported it, you stopped it, documented it, and held your abusers accountable. That's remarkable. I just didn't want to be a victim, I told her. You're not. You're a survivor. There's a big difference. The library held a small celebration when I was nominated to the board of directors, a position I'd never sought, but that was offered after my situation became known. We want people of integrity on this board, the president told me. You showed extraordinary courage, Margaret. My life didn't just return to normal. It became better. Without the constant stress of Brad and Jennifer's visits, their judgment, their manipulation, I felt lighter, younger, somehow. I hired a landscaper and had George's garden restored, not as a shrine to the past, but as something living and beautiful. I invited my book club over for tea parties. I adopted a rescue dog, a gentle golden retriever named Scout, who'd been abandoned by his previous family. Seems like we both got a second chance, I told him, scratching behind his ears. Father Michael visited often, always bringing cookies from the church bake sale. You know what I admire most? He said one afternoon. You didn't let them make you bitter. You fought back, you won, but you didn't let it poison who you are. Some days I'm still angry, I admitted. That's healthy. Anger at injustice is righteous. It's what you do with it that matters, and you chose justice over revenge. I'd chosen more than that. I'd chosen myself. Patricia organized a new beginning dinner party. Eleanor, Father Michael, Sarah Chen, and several friends from the library. We laughed, we toasted, we celebrated not just my victory, but the community that had supported me through the darkness. To Margaret, Patricia raised her glass, the strongest woman I know. To friendship, I countered. I couldn't have done this alone. But I had done it. With help, with support, with love. But ultimately, I'd been the one to stand up, to say no, to fight back. Brad had tried to take everything from me. Instead, I'd taken back my life. A year after that awful Thursday, when Brad had slammed papers in front of me, I was sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset. Scout lay at my feet, occasionally thumping his tail when birds landed in the restored garden. The tomatoes were coming in beautifully, I'd planted them myself this spring. Life had become not just bearable, but genuinely joyful. The library board position had opened unexpected doors. We'd launched a literacy program for adult learners, and watching people discover reading at 60 or 70 filled me with purpose. We'd exceeded our fundraising goals by 30%. I'd even started dating. Harold was a widower from my book club with kind eyes and gentle humor. We'd shared dinners, movies, and a kiss that made me feel like a teenager. The fact that I was open to possibility again felt like a miracle. Patricia and I had started a support group for seniors who'd experienced family financial exploitation. We met monthly, helping others find courage to fight back. My book club friends had rallied around me. We'd taken a trip to New York City and were planning Charleston for spring. Life was full again. Rich mine. But I heard things about Brad. Small towns have long memories. His law practice had collapsed entirely. He'd taken a position as a contract attorney, lower pay, no autonomy, reviewing documents in a cubicle. He'd lost the house to foreclosure. He was living in a small apartment, driving a 10-year-old sedan. Jennifer had remarried within 8 months, a wealthy investment banker. She was living in Greenwich, posting photos of European vacations. She'd never looked back. Brad had gained weight, lost his hair, looked 10 years older. Father Michael had seen him at a community event. He asked if you were happy, Father Michael told me. I said you were thriving. He looked like I'd punched him. I felt sadness and relief. Sadness for the son I'd raised. Relief that I was free. Tom Henderson had asked me to join his company's charitable foundation board. I'd accepted. My house remained mine. The trust ensured that. Brad would receive exactly $5 in my will, no more, no less. On Scout's first anniversary, I threw a small party. My found family gathered in George's garden. To second chances, I toasted. Brad had tried to take everything. Instead, I'd gained clarity about what truly mattered: integrity, courage, and the family we choose. I'd lost a son, yes, but I'd found myself. And that was everything. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't see clearly before. Family is a privilege, not a right. Blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to your peace, your home, or your dignity. If you're facing something similar, manipulation, financial abuse, coercion from family, please know this: you deserve better. You're not being difficult by protecting yourself. You're not being ungrateful by saying no. You're being strong. Would you have fought back in my position? Or would fear have won? Tell me in the comments. Share your story. Let's help each other be brave. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more stories of survival and strength.